a farm here in Wilson County. The reason why we're here is basically a culmination of a considerable amount of work the agency and our partners have done. In years past, when we've done our telemetry with Indiana bats, identifying maternity habitat on the summer landscape. Initially, that project was geared towards identifying maternity habitat in a small area up on the northern part of the Cumberland Plateau. The Indiana bats took us to many different states, but in 2013 they brought us here. But most important was in successive years, so in 13, 14, and so on, we kept tracking Indiana bats to the same farm. The Indiana bats are very specific in the type of roost tree that the females establish maternity colonies in. So they really key in on dead trees where the bark has popped from the tree itself. And so it creates a void in which the females get underneath and they raise their pups. So the other thing about the primary roost trees where the maternity colonies are established, it's an ephemeral habitat. So it's here one year and it's gone the next. The very first tree we found here, it had a colony of about 70 individuals, and that following winter, it fell to the ground. So when the Indiana bats returned, that tree wasn't here, and they had to expend resources and energy to find another tree. So we've worked with the landowners to come out here and put some artificial habitat in place to hopefully increase the occurrence of that habitat long term. Indiana bats are federally listed by the Fish and Wildlife Service as endangered. Last estimate, there's approximately about 500,000 individuals range-wide. Here in Tennessee, our declines exceed around 80% at a lot of our sites. We have a priority 1 site deemed by the Fish and Wildlife Service over in East Tennessee, and there was at one time the count exceeded 12,000. This past year, it was just barely above 700. So we're losing Indiana bats at a very quick rate. A lot of that is due to Whitenose Syndrome. We're going to put a total of 9 artificial roost trees in this particular field. We've identified locations on other parts of the farm where we're probably going to put up a minimum of 9 others to increase this habitat in this part of the area, because not only have we tracked Indiana bats to this particular farm in Wilson County, we've tracked Indiana bats to several other farms within this county. And so this part of the county seems to be a pretty significant area during the summertime for Indiana bats. And so we want to provide as much habitat on the landscape as possible. So this Brandon bark here basically mimics bark on a tree. But what's significant about it is it's a large piece of bark that mimics that space that's created when a tree dies and that bark pulls away. But it also creates different areas underneath it that may be warmer or cooler. So the microclimate underneath this could vary tremendously like it would in a tree. In a tree in a natural setting, they're going to move to warmer or cooler areas depending on what their needs are at that particular time, and this piece of artificial bark will mimic those same microclimates to a certain degree. We've treated the bottom portion of the pole that's going to go in the ground. We're using gravel in our holes. We've got caps on the tops. We're hoping these here will last in excess of 10 years. So it'll provide that primary roost habitat long term. We know we have Indiana bats in the area. We've had Indiana bats in this part of Wilson County for several years that when they show back up from their spring migration where they've left their winter sites here in Tennessee and other sites, that we'll end up having bats on this farm again in the spring and summer of 2020.